We live in a world that often encourages us to see the good in others. We're trained to offer the benefit of the doubt, to hope for growth, to believe in transformation, to pour into someone's potential. And while there's something admirable about that, there's also a hidden risk, especially when you're dealing with someone who's already revealed who they truly are, not through words, but through actions, through habits, through their lack of care, yet we look past it. We rewrite what's real with what we wish we saw. We hold on tightly to small moments of kindness, enlarge them in our minds, and hope they blossom into something deeper. That's where attachment begins. And the longer we turn away from what they've already shown us, the further we sink into a connection that was never based on truth in the first place. Recognizing who someone is from the start takes strength. It asks you to face discomfort head on and say, this is all I need to know to step away. But many people don't. Most wait for confirmation through heartbreak. They wait until the betrayal repeats. They wait until the pain becomes impossible to deny. And by then they're emotionally tangled up to a point where walking away feels like letting go of a part of who they are. That's why it becomes difficult to leave, not because of the love, but because of the identity they built around that person, the narrative they created about who the person might become. We don't fall in love with what's actually there. We fall in love with ideals, with the version of them we constructed in our imagination, and not from our real experience. That's why the ending hits so hard, because we're not only mourning the person, we're also mourning the story, the future we imagined. And when you've emotionally invested in a dream, the truth feels like betrayal. Even if it's been there all along, you notice the red flags. You felt that internal nudge, that quiet discomfort, and talking to them, that little pause before fully trusting you. Sensed it, but knowing isn't the same as facing it. Knowing is awareness. Acceptance is doing something about it. And true detachment begins the moment you stop adjusting the truth. The moment you remove the hopeful lens and see the person not as you wish they were, but as they've shown you consistently. You must realize people show you all you need to know in their actions. If they're hot and cold, careless, or unkind, it's not just a rough patch. It's not stress. It's not a temporary phase. It's their usual behavior. It's what you'll get again and again. And holding on, hoping for it to shift, is like watering a plant that's already dead. No matter how much care you give, the outcome remains the same. And here's a truth that many avoid. If someone mistreats you, it's not your role to fix them. It's not your job to become so lovable that they finally change. You're not here to be a healing center for emotionally unavailable people. You're not here to earn a respect. That should come freely. If someone can't appreciate you without constant reminders, without begging, then they don't value you, and you won't be the one to change. That they are who they are, and they've already shown you. When that happens, it's time to let go. Not out of anger, not out of resentment, but because your peace, your vision, your future needs you. To stop pretending you can't keep debating reality and expect to find freedom. You must release the illusion. You must grieve what might have been. You must accept that love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes love is recognizing when something is harming you and walking away while keeping your self-worth strong. People aren't mysteries to be solved, and your value isn't proven by how much suffering you can take. There is no reward waiting at the end of emotional exhaustion, only emptiness, and you deserve better than to feel constantly drained, worn out, spiritually tired just because you stayed in a place that asked you to forget your own needs. That isn't love. That's neglecting yourself. It's time to accept, time to believe them the first time to quit waiting for a different version of someone who already showed you their limits. That's how detachment truly starts. Not in fury, but in awareness, in the quiet understanding of this is how things really are. And that silent truth carries more strength than any excuse they could offer it. It's a painful realization to arrive at, that your silence, your absence might echo louder in her thoughts than anything you ever said. And that's the strange twist in relationships. We think that keeping quiet avoids conflict, that not speaking or showing up will protect us from pain. But actually it does the opposite. Silence has a voice, and in the right moments it screams. You must realize what happens when you stop showing up, when you stop explaining, stop defending, stop chasing clarity. It changes everything, especially with someone who deep down thought you'd never leave. People who are used to being pursued don't know how to act when the footsteps behind them are no longer there. They freeze, and for the first time they have to turn around and face the space they helped create. That silence turns into a mirror they've been avoiding, and it's not the silence itself that shakes her, it's what fills the silence. Her own thoughts. The ones she's pushed aside, the ones she covered up with attention and outside noise. But now, in your absence, they rise. The questions surface, the internal doubts she never wanted to face. Why did he pull away? Why didn't he fight for this? Was it my fault? And here's the thing, those questions aren't yours to carry anymore. They're hers to deal with, hers to reflect on. Because when you go silent, you give her the chance to finally hear her own mind. And what she hears stings. Those who crave control, who use emotions to manipulate, who play games in love, they aren't ready for silence, because silence removes the battlefield. There's no argument left, no reaction to stir up, no energy to use. It leaves them facing the one opponent they can't outsmart, themselves. And that's when the ego starts to crack, when the performance begins to fade. She might act like she doesn't care. She might pretend your absence means nothing. But that's just a shield, a delay. One last effort to keep control. But deep down, she knows what's been lost. She feels your silence like a thread pulling at the lies she's built. And the longer you stay silent, the more that thread pulls until the image falls apart. Because, here's the truth, there's nothing more powerful than a man who no longer feels the need to explain. A man who walks away, not out of rage, but because he finally sees clearly. That kind of silence isn't weakness, it's strength, it's self-control, it's insight, and it stays, it lingers in her mind in ways no words ever could. Because now, you're not someone she can handle. You're a space she can't fill. You don't need revenge to speak your truth. You don't need to yell to be heard. You don't need to argue your worth. You just need to step away with peace and let time reveal what it always does. It shows who really valued the bond, who took it lightly, who thought you'd never leave, even when they gave you every reason to. And when time moves on and your silence stays, it builds a pressure no pride can carry forever. Eventually she'll understand, slowly, in those late quiet moments when no one is there to feed her ego. In the silence where you once brought comfort or conflict, that's when regret creeps in. That's when her choices start to weigh on her. And no amount of attention or praise can silence the truth rising inside. She'll realize you're not being harsh by staying silent. You're being honest. You're stepping away from a connection that was never equal, never kind, never true. And by doing that, you're taking back something far more precious than her affection. You're taking back your self-worth. That's what your silence says. Not that you hate her, not that you wish her harm, but that at last you're choosing yourself. And that's what shakes her ego. Not your anger, not your sadness, but your calm. Because peace is the one thing she never thought you'd find. Without her, the one thing she thought she could control or take away, and yet here you are, still calm, still steady, and her world for the first time starts to tremble because now the only voice left is her own. And that silence, that's what stays. Not every fight needs words. Some of the strongest victories happen in complete stillness. There's something deeply unsettling that happens when someone realizes they no longer have access to you in the way they always assumed they would. Your attention was powerful, and once it's gone, once your energy disappears without warning, it leaves a void. And in that space, the very person who once overlooked you begins to seek the trace of you. It's not you they want back. It's the version of themselves that felt seen through you. They don't always want you back because of love. Sometimes it's not even the relationship they really miss. It's the feeling of being wanted, that feeling of being important to someone, being the focus of someone else's emotional world. And when that fades away, panic slowly creeps in. People don't just break all at once. No, it's a slow process. It's like a quiet shadow slipping in. At first, she acts like she doesn't care. She keeps herself busy, maybe even surrounds herself with others, just to prove to herself that you weren't that special. But that act doesn't hold for long, because deep down she knows the truth. It was your presence that gave her that sense of value. It was your steady support, your choice to stay, even when she pushed you away, that gave her a sense of importance. Now that you're quiet, now that you've stepped away, the reflection cracks, and her illusion begins to break. At first, she might comfort herself with her pride, thinking you'll return, that you're just being distant temporarily, that it's just a game. But with every day that passes, that comfort fades, because you're not chasing her. You're not trying to change her mind. You're not working to fix what broke. And it's that calm, that full silence that starts to speak the loudest. It's not your words she misses. It's the energy you brought, the way you gave emotionally, the way you showed up when things got tough. That memory lingers, especially compared to the silence she's facing now. Because it doesn't show weakness, it shows strength. It shows that you chose to stop giving yourself to something that couldn't hold you properly. That kind of understanding, that kind of calm pulling away leaves a deep impact. When she was with you, she was never truly alone. Even in disagreements, even during distance, there was always a quiet assurance you would still be there. She believed you'd always return, but now that comfort is gone and the fall begins, not on the outside where others can see, but inside where it hurts the most. That's where the real breakdown happens, when no one else is there to see it. This isn't about you hoping she hurts. It's not revenge, it's reality. Every action has a consequence. And when you've spent enough time feeling unseen, unappreciated, maybe even treated poorly, stepping away is the only respectful choice left. That decision doesn't make you cold-hearted, it makes you aware. Aware of your value, aware of the difference between real love and just being someone's habit. Aware that you can't keep giving to someone who doesn't even understand what they're receiving. Here's the odd part. The more peaceful you are in your silence, the more it disturbs her. Because she expected you to be upset. She expected arguments. She expected you to ask for closure, but you gave her none of that. And that silence forces her to look in the mirror without your voice softening the truth. That's when it starts to sting. That's when guilt forms, not because you made her feel guilty, but because she realizes she created this herself. There's something heavy about watching someone finally get the cost of losing something they always assumed would still be there. Not because you wanted to see them regret, but because sometimes the only thing that wakes a person up is distance. Not pain, not punishment, just total absence. That's when the lessons begin. That's when the truth can't be ignored anymore. You didn't destroy her, you simply stopped fixing the dream she wanted to believe in. You stopped carrying the weight of her confusion. And when you did that, you gave her space to fully feel what your absence really meant. Not just the lack of your body, but the absence of your presence, your patience, your affection. And that space, that emptiness, it's not light. It doesn't just disappear. It stays in the places your laughter used to fill. It shows up in the text messages that never come. It lingers in those long moments of quiet she didn't expect. That's what chips away at pride. That's what breaks through the surface. Let her stay in that space, not because you don't care, but because that's where real change happens. Not in comfort, not in praise, but in facing the consequences of one's choices. That's where people start to grow. That's when they finally realize what they once took for granted. And if she ever reaches that understanding, it will happen without your help, without your voice leading her to it. That quiet will echo more than anything you ever said. There's something powerful about not reacting. Most people need validation, even if it's through anger or sadness. But when you remain quiet, when you take away your attention fully, it becomes unexpected. It makes the other person face not just their actions, but who they are without you around. That reality, that moment where their ego meets your silence, it's harsh, but it's real. There's no trick in silence. It's pure cause and effect. When someone breaks your heart and you choose not to fight back with rage or desperate words, you do something rare. You reveal their emptiness. Because when someone expects you to chase, to cry, to plead, and you do none of that, you don't just walk away. You take their sense of control with you. And that change hits hard, especially for someone whose pride was built on the idea that you'd always respond, that no matter what she did, if she pulled away or pushed, you'd return. That belief is shattered the moment you stay silent. That silence isn't just the absence of noise. It's a clear message. It says, I saw who you really are, and I chose peace over chaos. It speaks self-respect, because true strength doesn't have to be loud. The strongest people can leave without needing to make a scene. They don't set fire on the way out, they just leave. And that emptiness, that quiet exit, leaves a deeper impact than any shouting match could. Now, you're not trying to punish her by being silent. That's not what this is. You're simply refusing to be part of the story she kept writing, where you were always available, always reacting, always just one emotional pull away. But now she's facing something she never expected, your lack of interest. And nothing makes a person question themselves more than realizing someone they once emotionally controlled is no longer reacting. It's easy to toy with emotions when you know someone will always answer, always try harder. But when you stop doing that, when your silence becomes your answer, that's when things truly start falling apart, because now there's no one to blame, no one to argue with, just a reflection staring back. And sometimes that reflection is the hardest thing to face. You're not leaving her, not in the way people think. You're stepping away from a situation that was never balanced. You gave and she took. You tried while she tested. And after repeating that cycle enough times, silence is no longer just an option. It becomes a need. Not to make her feel pain, but to finally hear your own thoughts. To listen to that small, calm voice that's been telling you, you deserve more. That voice doesn't scream, it just waits for the moment when everything gets quiet enough for you to hear it clearly. And when you do, you begin to understand just how much energy you spend trying to earn the love of someone who couldn't see your value. And though that truth stings, it sets you free. Because once you taste peace, real peace, you won't want to go back. Even if she returns, full of apologies, full of tears, full of regret, you won't trade that peace for anything. Her pride may break. She might try to rebuild it with someone else, distract herself, rewrite the story to make herself the victim. But somewhere in her mind, she'll remember. She'll remember the one who didn't yell, who didn't try to prove anything, the one who walked away quietly, without drama. And that memory will last, not because you hurt her, but because you didn't react to the hurt she caused. That's what stays. There's real power in keeping calm, in walking away without drama, in choosing yourself without blaming her. That's not weakness. That's having a clear mind. That's understanding that the most powerful move isn't always an action. Sometimes it's doing nothing at all. And when it's all said and done, it's your silence, not your voice, that will echo the longest. Understand this clearly. Once you begin to rebuild yourself after a heartbreak, you become someone different, someone stronger. And that strength, that quiet confidence, is threatening to the person who once thought you'd never walk away. Not because you're seeking revenge, but because now, for the first time, you are no longer shaped by what they did. You're no longer stuck needing their approval. And that shift changes everything. When that moment comes, when the light that once shined on them turns back inward, it unsettles them in ways they never expected. See, there's a certain kind of ego that feeds off the belief that you're broken without them, that gains strength from the idea you're lost and stuck after they left. That ego pictures itself as the sun and you as just one of the many things moving around it. But when you stop orbiting, when you realign your path and your energy, you stop being predictable. You turn into something they can't influence anymore. And people who survive on control don't handle uncertainty well. It pokes holes in how they view themselves. When she sees you growing, there's a moment of confusion. You weren't supposed to rise, not like this, not with that kind of focus, that kind of calm, that level of strength. She might never say it out loud, but it shows. In the way she checks your profile, in the way mutual friends mention your name, in the way she suddenly starts showing up in conversations again. Because your healing, it's not just personal, it's disruptive. It messes with the story she made up in her mind that you'd always need her more than she ever needed you. And when that story begins to fall apart, so does the pedestal she built for herself. Now she has to face a truth that stings. She wasn't the conclusion of your story. She was just a chapter. Maybe one filled with hurt, maybe one that nearly shattered you, but not the last page, not the author. And once that truth lands, it doesn't matter how high her ego stood. It begins to crack, not because you meant to hurt her, but because the base of that ego, your dependence, no longer exists. Rising isn't about showing off. It's not about putting your wins on display or trying to prove something. It's far quieter than that. It's in the discipline, in the way you keep showing up, even on the hard days, in how you now speak more clearly, walk more deliberately, surround yourself with people who bring out your growth instead of draining your spirit. It's in the silence of your dedication. And believe me, nothing shakes a fragile ego more than the silent progress of someone they once underestimated. Because remember, ego doesn't like self-reflection, it prefers confusion. It favors the version of you that was needy, lost, always reaching out. But the newer version, the one who doesn't look back, who doesn't chase, who no longer needs to be seen, this version highlights everything they never fixed in themselves. That's what makes it hard to swallow. Because now she has to face the fact that the person she believed was beneath her has grown beyond her reach. There's a unique kind of power in becoming unavailable, not in a petty, spiteful way, but in a thoughtful, intentional way. When you become centered on your own growth, your own goals, your inner peace, you become hard to reach for the things that once made you lose yourself. That kind of distance, it builds value. Your presence becomes rare, and anything rare becomes valuable, especially to someone who thought you'd always be there, easy to reach. But here's the truth. She didn't lose you when she broke your heart. She lost you when she assumed you wouldn't bounce back. That was her real mistake. She thought her leaving would define you. Instead, it helped shape you. And now, every step forward, every win, every boundary you set, every moment of peace, that's a message. A message that she was never your ending. She was only part of your beginning. So rise, not to make her regret it, but to confirm to yourself that you can, to show yourself what happens when you don't quit, when you turn pain into focus, heartbreak into determination, and confusion into direction. In doing that, you'll discover something deeper than revenge or validation. You'll discover freedom, and nothing shatters an ego like the quiet of someone else's success. You have to understand, your silence is not just a lack of talking, it's a presence that sticks around, echoes, and grows louder with time. There's a strange thing about silence. Most think it means emptiness, when in truth, it means everything. Because when there are no more words, no more explanations, what's left is the mind. And the mind never stays still. It begins to roam. It begins to imagine. It starts questioning things. And soon, it starts breaking down all the stories a person told themselves to avoid dealing with the truth. When you stop chasing someone, especially someone who counted on your constant attention, your forgiveness, your validation, something begins to shift. The balance of power flips. Where she once felt safe, knowing you'd always reach out, always apologize, always fix it first, now there's only mystery. And that mystery causes stress. A man who stays quiet forces others to hear things they've ignored. Their own mistakes, their guilt, their pride, and often that's when the real unraveling begins. Because if you had blown up in anger or begged for closure, she could have told herself a story to justify it all. He's too emotional, or he's not strong enough. It would have been easy. But you didn't give her that. You gave her silence. And not the kind she asked for, the kind she never thought you'd truly give. The kind that's final, detached, done. And when someone with a weak ego is given that sort of silence, they panic. Not because they miss you in a romantic way, but because they realize they're no longer the center of your attention. And that scares them. With time, your silence turns into a mirror, but not for you. For her. It forces her to look at herself, and the longer she looks, the more cracks start to appear, because the story she built to protect herself no longer holds up when faced with reality. She begins to recall the things she said, the way she ignored your feelings, the times she brushed off your pain. And now, with no comfort coming from your direction, she starts questioning everything. Did I judge him wrong? Was I unfair? What if he never returns? She may never speak those questions aloud, but they echo inside. And ego, as inflated as it can be, begins to shrink under the weight of those thoughts. Most people don't realize that distance isn't just about space. It's emotional, it's energy. And when that emotional gap becomes real, it hurts far more than any fight. Because an argument means you still care. But silence, That means you've let go. And when you let go, you take away their power. That's when the unraveling starts. She might pretend not to care. She might post happy pictures, keep herself surrounded by distractions, act like she's doing just fine. But it's all noise. None of it replaces the empty space you left. Your silence created a gap that nothing else can seem to fill. Every effort she makes to cover it up, new people, social media, casual flings, only makes the emptiness louder because none of it carries the meaning that you once did. And when she starts feeling that emptiness deep inside, it's not just her heart that feels it, it's her pride that begins to collapse. There's something deeply unsettling about knowing someone has moved on without you, especially when you never thought they could. And when you carry yourself with quiet strength, when you keep building your life without needing to talk about it, when you find peace without looking for sympathy, that's when it hits her. Not in some big dramatic moment, but in small, quiet ones. When your name pops up in a conversation, when a memory slips in out of nowhere, when she wonders whether you ever think about her anymore. That's when it truly hits. Not that you're gone, but that she can't touch you anymore. Not emotionally, not mentally. And that's what finally breaks the ego. Not your sadness, not your anger, but your indifference. Your absence says more than any words ever could. It says, I've moved past this. And when a man outgrows what once hurt him, he becomes unreachable. That's when real freedom begins. And real freedom means the end of someone else's control. So remain silent, not out of bitterness, but out of strength, because the quiet echo of your growth will humble her ego in ways that no speech ever could.